So today I'm doing a tag video response from my friend Marcus over at xfile2708. So the tag for this one is 31 horror movies that you would recommend to someone for the month of October. So a bit like what Marcus has said at the start of his video, you know, you don't want all the same type of horror movie all the way through the 31 days. So I've decided I'm going to break mine up into 3 segments. I'm going to do 10 movies that are like gateway horror, entry horror, almost borderline family horror where you can get sort of like started. And then the next 10 movies after that are going to be movies that are kind of like essential horror, classic horror if you like, that I would personally watch and recommend. And then the last 11 movies to get up to 31 will be basically titles that are not the main focus titles that you would think of straight away when you're thinking of horror movies. Hopefully a couple of curveballs in there, but yeah, I mean, if you're in the horror community and your horror movies, you're going to know most of them. But you know, they're not necessarily the mainstream movies that everyone would think of if you're just dipping your toe into horror. So yeah, that's how we're going to do the video. Thank you very much, Marcus, for tagging me into this one, and I will get on with the video right now. So as most of these titles are going to be very well-known titles, especially the 2 sort of 10 blocks that we're going to start with, the entry-level horrors, then the sort of mid-range horrors, the essential horrors. I'm not going to spend too much time on each one because the video is going to drag on and drag on. You're going to flash the title and move on to the next one pretty much. So first one for an entry-level horror is going to be Casper, the Friendly Ghost. I saw this one at cinema and yeah, it's a PG I think, but it's a really good film. I always enjoy this one. I've gone back to it many times over the years. Next one is Coraline. So Coraline again, PG rated, so kind of okay for the family. There's some pretty dark scenes in this for a stop motion animation, but that will be the second one on my entry-level horror. The next movie on the sort of gateway horror would be Hocus Pocus. So I didn't really see this one growing up very much, but I watched it quite recently, maybe last year, year before, and had a good time with it. Yeah, nothing too scary in this one. Again, PG rated, but kind of a family film, but it does definitely go sort of on that theme of Halloween and the spookiness and witches. So yeah, number 3 on my recommendations. Number 4 on my recommendations, not too dissimilar to Coraline, it is the stop animation of Paranorman. So yeah, this one's a good one. Lots of sort of zombies in there. Again, PG rated, so kind of anyone in the family can join in with this one as well. Bit of a classic here now. So this one is another PG rated one, The Addams Family. So yeah, I watched this one quite a few times. Again, nothing too offensive in this one. Nice creepy atmosphere all the way through. But yeah, definitely one with lots of rewatch for me personally. So one that surprised me when I watched it, I haven't watched it for a long time, but I used to read the books of this when I was younger and I enjoyed those. I didn't have any expectations for this one going into it, so maybe that helped. But yeah, had a pretty good time overall. That's Jack Black in Goosebumps movie. Again, PG rated, some good creatures in there, you know, and the ventriloquist dummy is always fun to see on there. So yeah, that's number 6 on my list of entry-level horror. So creeping up the ratings a little bit now. I think this is PG-13 in America. I don't know if that translates to about 12 maybe in our rating system, but this one is Arachnophobia. So yeah, depending on what your fears are, this one could be more scary than for some than others, but doesn't bother me too much. But I do enjoy the film overall. John Goodman in this one is always fun to watch. So the next one is Ghostbusters, again another childhood staple of mine, and probably one of the reasons I'm still into horror now. But yeah, good special effects in this one for its time, with the old ghost in the library especially standing out. So yeah, some spooky bits in there, but not too many. So again, although it says 12, I think that's for the special features on the disc. I don't think it's for the film, or maybe the sequel, not sure. But yeah, that is Ghostbusters, PG, possibly 12. So the final 2 now in the sort of like gateway horror movies to get someone into horror, going up a little bit now. So this is the Gremlins movie, again another childhood staple for me. 15 rating on this one, so yeah, it does up the gore a little bit in this one, but it's still sort of a family orientated film in my eyes. Nothing too sinister and dark. They're quite kind of wacky creature effects going on in there, so yeah, I really enjoy this one and the sequel as well. And the last one that I would consider more of a gateway sort of horror, and again because I watched it as a child growing up, definitely younger than the certificate on this one, and that is Beetlejuice. So yeah, absolutely loved this one as a kid, had it on VHS, and it was one of those ones that I threw on all the time. So yep, good creature effects in there. Again, a bit more sort of a wacky kind of fun scare rather than the actual full-on sort of like trying to terrify you. So yep, that will be the last one on my 10 movies for like gateway horror, getting into horror if you're just starting off. Okay, next segment. So that is the first 10 done. The next 10 here of the 31 days of horror So you can't have the essential horrors without the elephant in the room, John Carpenter's classic Halloween. So yeah, I can say I'm not going to spend all day on these ones. Everyone should know pretty much all of these 10. These are just 10 that I personally would choose as like big heavy hitters for Halloween. Second one on the list, one of my personal favourites, that is Paranormal Activity. So if you like things that go bump in the night that you can't see, highly recommend this one. Number 3 is another classic, which has had the special box treatment from Second Sight, which is up high on the shelf, but I'm still clinging on to this release, and that is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So this is the original one, and arguably the best one. But yeah, this one should have been seen by any horror fan by now, I think, if it's come out back in the 70s. Number 4 on my list of essential horrors is going to be The Fly. Again, this is the remake, but this is the 80s remake, and this is so good. Body horror. I saw this at the cinema, and it looked fantastic. So again, this is one of my childhood ones growing up. This was the Evil Dead 2. So this one, just for me, combines enough gore, comedy, splatter, darkness. Everything's the perfect mix in this one for me personally out of all the Evil Dead movies. So this is my pick of the Evil Dead series to watch in my list of 10 essential horrors. Number 6, I want to say now. 6 on the list of essential horrors that everyone should have seen if they're getting into horror is Scream. So yeah, Wes Craven, where he sort of reinvented the horror genre again, give it a big kick up the backside, and yeah, it started off all the franchise of Scream. So another John Carpenter now, so you can't really, I don't think you can call yourself a John Carpenter fan if you haven't seen this one. This is The Thing. So this one here, again, essential horror. Some would say a dark thriller, but I would class this one as more of a horror. This is The Shining. And the last 2 of my sort of heavy hitters now for essential horror classics you should have seen by now would be the original Nightmare on Elm Street. So yeah, this one's got the 4K coming out soon, which I've pre-ordered, and can't wait to get my hands on that one. And the last one of the 10 essential horrors that you must have seen if you're going to get into horror is Friday the 13th, the original one. Yes, everyone knows that Jason necessarily isn't in it much, let's say, but yeah, it's still a great film, I think, and once again, it's one of those ones that's kickstarted such a big franchise. It's an essential piece of cinema you've got to see if you're into your horror movies. Okay, so the last segment of the video now, this is going to be the sort of final 11, so I thought I'd throw the extra 1 on these ones, just because, you know, they're going to be ones that are slightly lesser known. Like I say, most horror people, if you're watching this, you've probably heard of these already, but we're just going to go, because they're not the most common ones you would come to. It's not the ones that spring to mind instantly for most people, but these are ones that I really enjoy that don't get much light, so I thought I'd shed a bit more light on them. So the first one is Maniac. So this is the remake of Maniac, and I really like this one. I think from memory this was pretty much mostly shot from point of view, but yeah, like I say, I'm not going to spend all day on these ones, but I'd recommend checking out the remake of Maniac. Number 2 on my list, and now this one draws a soft spot for me because of the age I am and the sort of time frame this came out, which was when I was a teenager. Hasn't got UK Blu-ray yet to my knowledge, so I had to import it, but that is Valentine. So I rewatched this one, and I thought I was going to be in for a bad time, because I remember having the DVD and enjoying it, but remembering it not being the best horror movie in the world. But yeah, I had a much better time with this than I remembered seeing when I was way younger. So yeah, I don't know. I really enjoyed this one. Worth seeking out if you like those sort of teen slashers that were around in the early 2000s, late 90s. So this one doesn't get talked about, I don't think, hardly at all. I don't know if I've heard anyone talk about this one. It does borderline more into the thriller territory, but I think on IMDb it does still come under the horror category of one of many categories. And it's Gillian Anderson and Danny Dyer in Straight Heads. So yeah, this one, if you haven't seen this one, this is a bit of a kind of like stalker invasion type film. I'm not going to spend all day on these ones, but I really enjoyed this one. Danny Dyer is basically a guy who sets up CCTV cameras. He's doing it for Gillian Anderson and or her character. They get sort of involved. They get in a bit of a scuffle with some sort of road rage, and I won't tell you too much more than that. But yeah, pretty dark, bit of a revenge kind of like thriller. But yeah, just tiptoes into the horror category for how gruesome it gets. So yeah, that was my number 3 of lesser known horror movies. So the 4th one is an absolute favourite of mine, and I've spoken about it a few times on the channel before, but I wouldn't want to miss it again. So this is again a Danny Dyer movie, bizarrely put them together, I don't know why. But this is Severance, absolute comedy gold. I find this so funny, and it's got some gore to back it up and some kind of like tense scenes in there as well. There is a DVD of this one. This is an import, obviously, on Blu-ray. But if you haven't seen Severance with Danny Dyer, I just think it's so funny. Go watch the trailer if you're not sure, but yeah, I think it's hilarious. So number 5 on my list is a much more modern movie compared to the ones I've been talking about. Me and a buddy watched this one, again going in with low expectations from what we'd heard, but we both had a good time with it. So yeah, I'm going to throw it on this list. That is Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. I believe it's an A24 movie. I may be way off with that. No, it's an A24 movie. But yeah, this one's really good. It's kind of like a bit of a meta modern horror. One of those ones where you think you know where it's going, then maybe you don't. But again, I won't say much more than that. If it sounds a little bit interesting to you, then go check that one out. So number 6 is one of my favourite directors. I think has been appearing now is Ty West, and this movie kind of like fooled me when I started watching it. I didn't know anything about this going in. Didn't know it was a Ty West movie. Didn't know Ty West, I don't think, when I went into this. But when I was about halfway through, I had to literally stop, go on IMDb and basically check when this film was made, because I was so convinced that it was a movie of its time period, which I think is maybe the early 80s, possibly late 70s. And I thought I just missed it all these years and never heard of it. But no, he'd just done such a good job at recreating that time period. It looked like it was straight out of that time frame. And that is a movie called The House of the Devil. So yeah, this one's sort of, again, don't want to spoil any of these, but follows this girl who I think she's a babysitter, and she ends up going to this house to look after this woman who's sort of disabled for this guy. And then, yeah, things take a turn for the odd, let's just say, after a little while. But I'd highly recommend looking into that one as well. So this is another one that doesn't get talked about very much. And yeah, so this one is Honeymoon. So I remember having a really good time with this. I haven't seen it in a little while, but my vague memory of this is two newlyweds kind of go away on a honeymoon, obviously, into this sort of like cabin in the woods style thing. And during the night, this guy gets woken up by this sort of like light that comes in through the cabin somewhere, disturbs him, and he realizes that his wife is basically missing. So he heads outside, goes to try and find her, and yeah, she's basically just standing in the middle of the woods, naked, like very disorientated and confused. And he sort of brings her back, and things get very odd from there on out. So yeah, I don't want to say too much more, like I say, I don't want to spoil any of these movies, but if that sparks your interest, then worth looking into Honeymoon. So this one is an absolute favourite of mine, and again, doesn't get talked about enough in my view, and I know there's been many different versions of this type of film, but for me, this has got to be my personal favourite of it, and that is Body Snatchers. I absolutely love the effects in this one. It just ticks all the boxes. It's not a fantastic movie, I'll grant you, but I just get on really well with it. When a film just connects with you personally, and you just love the special effects, the time, everything about it, the acting, it ticks all my boxes, and I'd highly recommend this version of Body Snatchers. One that gets talked about now and again, but again, not as often as I think it should do, and that is a really good film called Frozen. Obviously not the Disney one, but this is where some guys and girls basically go away onto this ski resort. They sneak onto this like last ski lift, and well, they pay a guy off, or try to pay a guy off, I think, to let him go up after it's closed. Anyway, the park gets shut down and they end up being stuck up on this ski lift. So that isn't really a spoiler, that's kind of just like the premise of the whole film. But yeah, I won't tell you what happens after that, but it's definitely worth a watch. So this is the 10th one of the movies that don't get talked about enough in my view, and again, it does get talked about, I'm not saying it doesn't, but it is a personal favourite of mine, and that is The Blob. So this is the 80s version of The Blob. Absolutely love this film. I love the special effects, love the time frame, the runtime, everything about it, so I had to get the 4K of this one as well. So yep, that's number 10 on the list of recommended films that don't get enough light shed on them. So that's 30 movies for the 31 days. So I thought the last movie, the extra one that needs to go on the list here, should be one that is a what the fuck kind of horror. So if you haven't had a what the kind of horror yet, then this one should tick the box for you. That is The Human Centipede. So yeah, if you don't know anything about this one, I'd say going blind, but you know, you're in for a treat, or maybe not, depending on your taste. But yeah, that would be my last movie I'd recommend if you want one that doesn't do anything like any of the others do, and will definitely give you a physical reaction when you watch it. So that is my 31 days of horror movie recommendations, as I say, broken into 3 segments there, so hopefully there's something for everyone. Thank you again, Marcus, for tagging me into this video, pal. I just need to nominate 2 people, I think it is now, so I will try Nikky over at Skincrawlers. Really enjoy Nikky's channel over at Skincrawlers. So yeah, if you haven't been nominated already, pal, then I'd nominate you to do your 31 days. I'd be really interested in your list. And then I need to nominate another person. So the other person I'm going to choose, let's choose the big guns and let's see if we can get Mondo Chelloveck himself to do a 31-day recommendation list of horror. So Mondo, John, I'm going to see if you can you do your list, pal. If you haven't got time, I understand. I'm sure everyone's a busy man. Same with Nikky. But yeah, well, I'll nominate you, mate. And if you've got time to do it, I'll be really interested to hear your pick on the 31 recommendations for Halloween. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I will see you next time.